literally been doing 12-hour days for the last 5 days now, and when I'm not on the phone, I'm on my bike, chasing leads, calls, texts, WhatsApp, voice messages, the emails, just IR pitching for stuff. It's just been relentless.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Odd Tandem. Kind of a unique guest we have today, and to give a little backstory, similar to the United States, the road scene in the UK is struggling. We see many great riders from the UK in the World Tour peloton, and they got there through the junior and under 23 pathway teams, the Continental teams. Our guest today, Harry Tanfield, was a member of one of those teams just about a week ago. And he is now searching for a sponsor in order to keep this team going. Jens, he's in a tight pickle right now. What do you think about the conversation we just had with Harry?
It was dramatic, fascinating, giving us hope, but also be almost heartbreaking. And the consequences are not just there for him personally, but even though within his family, his brother is an Olympic medalist, he would be out of a job for next year. And just to give our viewers a quick overview, Tom Pidcock and Ben Turner, they came both from Trinity Racing. That team closes down the road program. The Saint Piran team is closing completely. They just had Jack Rudkin-Gray signing with EF Education Easy Post. So there is serious talent coming from these teams. And all of them are gone. So yes, it is super dramatic, but I loved his fighting spirit. So he is in there with everything he got. So yes, it was fantastic.
So just to let everyone know listening, this is a very time-sensitive issue. We recorded this about 4 days before their Friday deadline. We're not sure if this is going to get out before then. So we're not quite sure of the outcome, but our fingers are crossed for Harry and his buddies to make sure that the under 23 development team in the UK has a new pathway into the future. Hello, Harry Tanfield, and welcome to the Odd Tandem.
Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, we got a little interesting couple things to talk about with you. We understand that you're down in Girona, Spain at the moment, but for our viewers and listeners that don't really know, you're not really down there for a training camp because you have a pending date looming that kind of decides your future, don't you?
Yeah, we have until Friday, which is like 3 or 4 days essentially before we go in front of the British Federation for a meeting for this continental license that we're trying to get for a new team that I'm starting off. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit time pressed at the moment.
Would there be a chance British Cycling prolongs the deadline and goes, you know what, we give you another week because this is a desperate time? And what is missing? What support do you still need to match the deadline on Friday?
It's a good question, Jens. It's a good question. I would hope that they can maybe see the good things behind the projects that we're trying to establish, And for us right now, we've had some really good engagement with a lot of brands that are really interested to join the projects and have pledged to be a part of it. And we've got some cash on the table, to get the budget, not where we need it, but as a starting place is really good. But we're yet to sign a title sponsor, which is obviously what we need to get off the ground. And the bar is quite high from the federation of what we need to get that license. So for us, it's pretty difficult right now. I'm hoping that in the coming days, with talks that we've got going, that we can get over the line. But for the moment, it's still a work in progress, of course.
Just to give a little bit of context for our viewers and our listeners, Harry's in a unique situation here. He was on Team Saint Piran, and we've had the old boss Ricky Pascoe on an old rendition of our podcast talking about UK-based racing. So Harry was on that team. The team has recently folded, and not too soon before that, Trinity Racing road program ceased to operate. So despite all the massive success in UK cycling, which the genesis was basically when Team Sky started in 2010, there was a lot of kids from the UK that could race bikes. And little by little, and especially in the last couple of weeks, there are no registered Continental teams in the UK for next year. And Harry, who was, probably planning on doing a training camp or enjoying the last couple of days of his off season, decides to take up the torch and try to save the team or get a team put together at the last minute in order to be able to continue racing. Harry, how did this fall on your shoulders? Like, was this something that you volunteered for to keep this project going, or were you just kind of elected by your peers to do the hard lifting?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of context around, like, I mean, it was about a week. It was a week actually to the day, basically, that we found out in our team that there wasn't going to be a team. So for us, it was a big shock because at the time we'd signed contracts and everything was just the norm that the team was continuing, and we knew about Trinity that they stopped as well. And it was a big shock for us at the time, and the reason was that the federation wouldn't issue the license. So that basically, if they wouldn't get the license, then there was not going to be a team, is what the owner said. So yeah, basically with the day after that, I'd spoke with some of the DS and a few other people within the team that there was an opportunity that British Cycling had said, well, okay, we cannot issue the license, but if you start a new team, this is myself speaking with a friend, that there's an opportunity that we'll grant a 2-week extension on the UCI deadline to apply to us, but it cannot be any way related to Saint Piran, and not any sort of, it's not any way related to that old team. It has to be a ground up new team. So that obviously left very limited people that could be involved with it as well. And for us, like, I'm helping with my brother and one of the riders' dads, who's quite well connected to get this thing going. And when we had that opportunity there that they basically laid in front of us, I kind of thought, well, it's kind of, there's no option anyway, because the scene is, there's no teams left anyway. Everywhere is full. It's December, like it's the last week of November. There isn't really any options out there, and there's, with a lot of Trinity guys that are also left in this same situation that couldn't find a place anywhere. And I thought, well, we try because we have nothing to lose, so why not? And I was really surprised, like, when the whole, like, I put a piece out in the local, I just went inquiring around, really, because of the scale of the problem, that there is no team for any U23 riders to go into. For me, when I was at their age, I had, like, I don't know, 6 teams, I think, Continental teams. That's how I turned pro originally, with that, and getting the race exposure in UCI races and stuff, like the Tour of Yorkshire and Tour of Britain, that was on at the time. And yeah, now there's nothing. So it's really sad that the guys of the next generation, that if they're good enough to turn pro from junior, which some are, but a lot aren't, all they have to just directly skip the UK and try and sign in a team in Europe directly with a Devo team. a World Tour team. Basically, that's kind of the option. Other than they can ride in the UK circuit with a UK team, but you can only race inside the UK, so it's very difficult to get noticed and to have an opportunity to race abroad. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. That we, it's also trying to. It's not just like the riders of the old tier. It's really the young riders in the UK that are really going to suffer from this going forward. And it would be nice if the federation would help me out a little bit with a bit more time to try and get this thing over the line, basically.
So for our listeners and viewers, the situation right now is that Team Ineos Grenadiers is the only registered professional team in the entire UK. So you got basically juniors and nothing and Team Ineos.
Yeah.
So you would think that Team Ineos would be interested to have something underneath them, right? To have younger riders to develop. And I mean, for their budget, we're not talking £5 million here. I mean, it's for Ineos a relatively small number. Is there a chance that Ineos might just help to start a team?
Yeah.
Is there a chance the British Federation goes, you know what? We give you like a credit for whatever, 1% interest rate next year. We give you a credit for the money you need. Or, I know that's wild, but if you go, hey, listen, Team Ineos, if every of your British riders gives us 0.5% of the salary, that will save our year. Is there a chance for that?
That's a good way of putting it, Jens. I never thought of it that way, but the problem is, also trying to speak to anyone quite high up in Ineos is quite difficult. I don't know really who I'd contact directly there. It's maybe worth an approach to BC, but Ineos already just partnered with a German Continental team, so that's kind of.
I know, that's why, I mean, us Germans are okay with that, but how do you feel about that? That's a whole different story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty sad to see. And I know former pros from the UK that are now, 50s, 60s, that actually put a lot of effort into junior teams in the UK. There is some really strong, really good junior teams, that the Hope team and Fensham Howes, the Beeston team. There's quite a few teams in the UK that really give the juniors really good exposure of racing in Europe. And now, I think the owners are just kind of with their head in their hands, because where are you gonna go? You go from junior, unless you can directly jump to the pro level, or jump in a Devo team in Europe. If you come out of the junior team there's nowhere for them to go to, which before there was many continental teams with Trinity and other teams in the UK that there was a pathway, juniors can aspire to get somewhere to then keep progressing. But now there's just this huge gap, a huge hole there that needs filling. That's what we're trying to do, basically.
But you don't go from where UK cycling was, or I'm going to say it, USA cycling is in exactly the same situation, but it's been a couple years that we've been dealing with this kind of quagmire. But you don't go from a team that's winning the Tour de France, so many fans on the side of the road when the Tour de France goes there, to this without some reason, without some signs. Was this at all, was there any indication that it could get this bad, or was it just that slow bleeding until finally, it was done?
Yeah, I think it has just really been that slow bleeding. The COVID didn't help. But realistically, it has just been that. It's been a negative spiral, a bit of a doom loop, really, I would kind of describe it, of underinvestment in the racing coverage and the racing program in the UK, which has then led to a lack of interest through team support and engagement, I believe personally. But I think things are trying to change, and there is people involved now. There's just been a big commission, a road review done by British Cycling, with Ed Clancy going over it, and basically reviewing the whole scene of what can be changed and what can, and they made some really, really interesting recommendations, but ultimately it's only recommendations, and I don't know, maybe one of the 20 points has been addressed. So there is like work to do. And there's some other people that are just interested who started new pages. I don't know if you guys probably don't see the Monument HQ page that a friend of mine set up, and he now has like 70 or 80,000 followers on the Instagram and YouTube pages, and he only covers domestic racing in the UK, and he's like just did it himself. He's not affiliated to the federation or anything like that, and now he set up a pay for, you pay £30 for a year for a subscription to then be able to watch the races that he's able to then fund to have the races live streamed a little bit, like the criteriums and some of the road races. So it's people like independent people like that are coming on board to try and rejuvenate the racing in the country, which is really nice. But it would be nice if they were supported a bit more through the federation. But it's just a bit sad that it's just been left to kind of decline in that way, which is obviously, on paper maybe it looks different on their side, where there's more 1 kilometer cycle circuits everywhere, but it's not proper racing. It's just little cycle parks that kids ride around, and you can maybe do a nighttime criterium there and stuff, but it doesn't help riders to go pro.
When you mention the federation now a few times and the support you hope for, it's not only the juniors that are affected by that, it's also within your own family. Your brother is a world champion, right? And actually he won a silver medal in teams pursuit. Where is he gonna race next year, right? So the entire British winning gold medals, we take over the world-class performance plan, whatever they had back in the days. That's all falling apart because they cannot expect your brother to work in a bike shop until 4 p.m., then train and win another world championship.
Yeah.
So the federation must be coming up with some plan to also save the track program, right?
Yeah, I mean they pay like they don't get paid from the federation, they get paid a little bit from the national lottery money, but that's another topic of concern, that like they don't get paid a lot and it hasn't changed in 10 years, and like inflation has kind of eaten their kind of pay to get by. That's why a lot of those guys also rely on a road contract as well. And for some of them, like Ethan Hayter and Ethan Vernon and some of those guys that ride, full pro tour, they don't get that like allowance thing that's lottery funded. It's only for guys that really need it to help them still be able to train and perform at that level, but it's getting harder and harder, especially then with no teams in the UK for those guys to ride at. There's just no options. Like you do have to get a small part-time job or a side hustle thing on the go, really, if you haven't got that world tour or pro tour contract as well to kind of keep you ticking over, which is it's going to be detrimental to performance. And there's also like people don't want to do that anymore. They do want to just go pro on the road and try and get to the world tour if they can, but if they don't get there, then they're left with nothing. There isn't really an option to come back. There's nothing there for them to fall back on as well, which is a pretty big problem too. Yeah.
So I'm just having a hard time understanding, with so many young riders in the UK in the World Tour peloton, right? They had to get there some way. And now that pathway seems to be closed. For the young riders, if the situation stays the way it is now, will there be any racing calendar? I mean, will there be any teams to take the start in the criteriums that you've mentioned, or the famous time trials that we hear about that you guys do in the UK? Or is it just kind of like that's it, guys? That's, you got to go and find another job.
Yeah, it is pretty sad just to put it all into perspective. Yeah. There will be like shop teams and elite teams in the UK that kind of support the National Road Series. They just race in the UK and do that kind of stuff. So although entry numbers have been kind of going down a little bit in the men's side the last few years, but some races still get pretty well supported. I think that the lower level racing below that is kind of suffering a bit as well. Yeah, just because also if you take away that next step, if you're already riding for a good club or good shop team that you aspire to get in a continental team, and for everyone that sees it from the outside, like that is seen as professional in the UK, because yeah, you could dream of joining Ineos, but you know, the next step above is that's progression that people want to make, especially when they're young and, you know, 18, 19 from junior, to come out and to try to get into a team like that is really important. And yeah, it's kind of just like a bit of a kick in the teeth really for training, you know, through the juniors so hard and getting good results and things, and then there's nothing really to aspire to in that. You can complete the UK, and then yeah, what do you do? It's it doesn't make it easier with Brexit, but yeah, that's what the whole thing of us trying to make a team so we can get to Europe and get that exposure outside of the UK, as well as racing in the UK, because we want to support the UK scene. But yeah, to get the lads like exposure in Europe, so yeah, they can maybe join other development teams or to try and go into a pro team.
And for the deadline on Friday, what exactly do you need? Like 5 more team cars, 15 more riders, or 5 mechanics, whatever, 200 bikes? What's the paperwork? What's the hardware you need? Or is it just purely, I need budget?
Yeah, it's budget. Yeah, we've got enough riders. I've got a lot of DMs to go through. Yeah, there's a lot of riders, that's for sure. Yeah, there's more riders than if you had £1 for every rider, it'd be quite good for the budget, I think. But yeah, really, it's just the cash for the sponsorship. With the federation, they want to see a balanced budget, obviously, and we have to assume kind of worst cases because we don't have so much time. We have to focus our energy on getting the title sponsorship because that's the big money that we need to make the team happen. But equally, without focusing on the smaller sponsorships, the bikes and the clothing and other things like that, that eats into the budget, which would maybe already be serviced by the other sponsorships, if that makes sense. So like the more time you can spend investing on the smaller things too, the more money you save for the overall budget, which then means you can reduce the total, which is a lot better. It's a smaller target to hit. But we've had some really good talks with some really iconic brands in the UK, and they're fully behind the project and what I'm trying to do. So we get to put pen to paper, but there's commitments there, and the issue is it's not going to get us that. It's not going to get us that UCI license that we need the budget for. That's the concern. Yeah, so hopefully we can get an extension, I hope. But
So let's cut to the chase here. How much money do you need to get the license and to at least have a chance of getting on the start line once the races start in January? Like what do you need? What is your budget? What is that magic number?
I mean, in our portfolio that we've put together and budget plan, including contingency and kind of worst case, we're shooting for about 350k. That's pounds. As a worst case, kind of 250. But yeah, it's pretty big numbers. Not big by European continental teams, and maybe not big by Ineos numbers, but for a lot of businesses, it's quite big. But we are talking to some pretty big ones as well. So when they can have the sole exclusive UK team, okay, other than Ineos, and you know how good the project is for rider development in the UK and the positive media around it, I believe it's a really strong message that any partners do send out if they come on board with the project like this.
And how big is your team to talk to sponsors, to take phone calls, to send emails out? Is it just all you, or your entire family or 10 of your friends? How many people you have to take the phone calls and talk to these
It's been
potential
pretty difficult.
sponsors?
There's two fathers, two dads of riders that I work with, but they also work full-time jobs, so in between that it's pretty difficult. And another friend that's helped contract working before for teams, and he's pretty well connected in the cycling industry business world. And I've been just trying to get in touch with a few kind of agents that are well connected and people that I dealt with in the past, to kind of open some doors for me to corporate leads, really. Into that kind of environment, and just but also like a lot of support has really come through the articles that I've done with Cycling Weekly and British Continental Cycling News, just putting out there like the situation. I mean, people know that teams are going to stop, but actually to make an article like that about actually what this means for the UK, I don't think people put two and two together. They just kind of see, oh, this team's stopping or this team's stopping, and then they don't really, connect the dots and see the gaping hole that's there for rider development in the UK, which is, it's really sad to see. But the posts and the articles have got a lot of traction, and they reached like over 150,000 people, I think, like on views and things like that and engagements, which is really, really good. So I had a lot of interest from firms and people wanting to be involved with the team. And just following things like that has been really time consuming for me. I've been trying to train a bit, but I'm just, I'm going to go to bed after this. I've literally been doing 12-hour days for the last 5 days now. And when I'm not on the phone, I'm on my bike. And then when I'm not on that, I'm eating dinner, but then I've not particularly been eating very much the last few days because just constantly chasing leads, calls, texts, WhatsApp, voice messages, the emails, just IR pitching for stuff, it's just been relentless, and I think I'd suffer from burnout if I got to do it for another week. So let's hope we can get something sorted pretty quick.
I'm just starting to think, with the success, the massive success of the British cycling program on the track, and then with the Bradley Wiggins, the Mark Cavendishes, all the fantastic pros, the Chris Froomes that, officially has a British passport. Do you think that actually that success kind of was just, I guess, assumed that would continue, and then it just all of a sudden, little by little, like you said, over the last 2 years, just kind of fell out? Do you think the people in the UK kind of got spoiled, and now they're going to be in a situation like, wait a second, what happened here?
Yeah, I guess it's like an underinvestment thing. I mean, we're kind of picking the fruit now from, the trees that were planted, I guess, 10 years ago. But the issue is that there's no more trees getting planted now, and there's going to be a problem down the line, and I guess people just don't think long term with that. They just think that naturally things will just improve somehow on their own. But that's like kind of a pathway thing for maybe BC to kind of look at. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out that if there's no UK pro teams in the UK, then like, where can the juniors go to? That when they go to U23, we've got a road scene for them in the UK that's 5 races a year and a few crits, but that ain't going to turn them pro unless they're, winning by 5 minutes or something like that, I mean, there's still the national championships, which is obviously a great place to show how good you are in those kind of races. But I think that also just doing a European race program can really bring riders on, especially at a young age. Having, been there myself, and you learn to ride in the crosswinds in Belgium and experience the Pro Kermesses, and you flat out in the gutter in West Flanders. It's a bit different to riding the 120k kind of circuit lap in the UK. You don't need to learn about peloton positioning skills or going to the car or anything like that. It's just a completely different style of racing that we have here, because it's not It's not UCI racing. It's just national racing pretty much. Other than the Tour of Britain, but you need a license to do the Tour of Britain. Hence, us trying to get this like scrape by even when the bare minimum just to get a license means that we can do the Tour of Britain, which is fantastic. But yeah, I guess we have to see with that one.
So when there's not enough teams, we still hope your team gets going, but it's one team. There would be at least 2 more needed, right? If younger riders decide to try to get a license or start in a French or Belgian team, now after Brexit, you're not part of a European Union. Do you have to apply for a work visa to actually be able to live and work in France? Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah,
How complicated is that process?
It's very complicated.
For a young rider to get a proper official work license.
Yeah, it's very complicated, Jens. I mean, I know myself because my girlfriend's Dutch and I spend a lot of time in Europe, so it's very difficult. There's certain, when you're young as well, and if you're just going to ride for a team, it's really difficult to get the visas. Every country has their own policy with that, and like if you wanted to join a team in Holland, for the Netherlands, for example, it's super difficult to get a visa there without actually earning quite a sizable income that very few riders that are 19 or 18 will ever earn. I believe that there's a French talent visa that's possibly possible for young riders that they could maybe get if they had some sort of sponsorship, and the team's able to kind of sort that out for them. But other than that, in Europe, it's basically not possible. Like, you have a 3-month on, 3-month off kind of. It's a bit like from the States. Like when you guys come from the States, probably, I guess, from if you come from the States to Europe, then I think you probably have the same visa as we have for Europe, which is 90 days inside of 180, and it's like a rolling average. So it's not like if you just leave for one day and come back, you get another 90 days. It's a tracked rolling average. So you have to actually, you can't spend more than 50% of your time in that 180-day period out of your home country. So if you try and go abroad for one season, you can't do it, which then means that you have to fly to and from the country, which makes it even more prohibitive because of the cost with doing that as well. So yeah, I guess we've kind of been doubly screwed in the UK by the race scene and then Brexit as well. So yeah, that's why everyone's trying to get rid of the passport if they can, and the first thing any cyclist will try and do when they get to like 18 or under 23 is just to try and get rid of the British passport. And I've tried, but I can't because I went back 500 years and everyone is kind of from around 100 kilometers from where my house is. So I'm fucked.
Jeez. I mean, it was different for Jens, for Harry, even for you. I mean,
Yeah.
you had a developmental pathway, right? Like you were a junior, and then when you transitioned in, we didn't have under 23s back then, but you kind of had time to develop in the pro teams that we were on. I look at it as the riders coming out of the juniors, if they're winning races by 5 minutes, like you said, they're going to get everybody's eye, right? They're going to have everybody's attention, and they're going to jump ship. So with so many of these teams over the years, these developmental teams, investing time, investing money, investing resources in young riders, and then as soon as they get a couple good results, they don't sign for that affiliated World Tour team or pro team. They sign for whoever's going to give them the most money. Right?
Yeah.
So that leaves those developmental teams, especially the guys, the general managers, saying, why should we even do this? Back then, if you signed for developmental team that is sponsored by a pro team or a World Tour team, it was kind of like assumed that was the feed system, right?
Yeah.
But now everybody's skipping all over the place because everyone has an agent and everyone's looking for that big payout right away. Do you think the team owners and the people that actually invest in the riders' development get frustrated because here they are building a program, and then all of a sudden, hey, my contract isn't that very big. I'm just going to buy out of it. I'm going to sign for 10x that over at some other team. Are the riders to blame here a little bit?
I don't think the riders are to blame, but I guess that now are the times that riders are signing younger and younger, agents picking up riders younger as well. I mean, even from 10 years ago, it was ridiculous to sign from junior into directly to pro like that. But I guess it's happening. I don't know why they can't put a clause with when they join Devo teams that, you get first offers from the team, but I suppose there's no like restriction. You can't just say you can only sign for us, unless they maybe put that in the terms. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that they do. But it is pretty bad though the way that happens. I thought that there was a system in place that if a rider left a Continental team and signed pro, that the Continental team would receive a payment of like, I don't know, 3,000 euros. It literally peanuts, but something. I thought there was something like that in place, but I'm not 100% certain. Yeah, I'd have to check that. I don't know what.
They do have that. I don't know
That's
exactly how much it is, but yes, they have that. Earlier this year, I went to the UCI. They gave us the whole story, what they do, what they're planning to do, and they mentioned that. So it's
Right.
there. But in soccer, it is much more developed.
Yeah,
It lasts sometimes up to 10 years that the rider or the next team has to pay the junior team
yeah,
for about 10 years' time. Like, it really helps.
yeah.
the
It makes a
younger-
massive
the-
difference.
The smaller teams.
Because like the teams put that much effort and investment into that rider, and then just to see them just clear it off and going pro, and then a team with a 40 million euro budget going, yeah, there's $2,000, thanks for everything, and yeah, see you later. It is a bit ridiculous when you think about it. I don't know why it's not. Yeah, it needs reviewing urgently. But also then, I suppose with the development teams, if they turn pro and then go to a different development team, the development team is funded from the World Tour team anyway, so it doesn't really make that big a difference because it comes from a massive budget anyway. But certainly for the continental teams that aren't feeder teams from World Tour, like for them it makes a big difference. There it could really change because like in the future in 10 years, like who knows what this is going to look like, the race scene. Is Continental even going to still be around properly, or is it just going to be Devo and feeder teams? But obviously you can only have, I don't know, a maximum of 25 Devo teams because there's only so many pro teams anyway. So you need more teams to race, but it's kind of just like, it just seems like that's the way that it's going because it's how hard it is for smaller continental teams to survive and attract the investment that they need to develop the riders and to do a decent race program, really. Which is a bit sad.
So now that we touch some of these topics, again, fingers crossed your team takes off. What will you say in your first speech to your team? Well, and also, a double question. Will you be a rider or will you be the general manager of that new team? And what will you say in your very first speech to these young riders?
I think, for sure, I'd like to still race as my role as team captain in the team. We've come a long way, and to share my experience, and I have a few of the people in mind that I'd like to join me in that. It needs to be a good mix of experience and youth. It can't just be solely U23 guys. There also needs to be some experience there to help to guide those kind of riders. But hopefully those guys can also progress in a year or two. Like, we don't just want to be a one-stop team for 1 year and then just to fall away like the other ones. We want to have a long-term plan, which we need a bit more time for the sponsorship, obviously, to secure that future, but to really build a reputation as a sustainable team. And with the brands behind us that we've been talking to, I think that we can really make that happen. It's just a case of, obviously getting a license in the first place, but we have time once we've got that sorted. But yeah, for the guys there to speak to them on the start, I don't know what. I think it's probably I think everyone will also be relieved that they can still race. For them, they'll be really thankful if we can get this thing going, and that everyone will be super motivated and so appreciative of the opportunity that we've got to race. And if it means that we've got to do things a little bit on the cheap and in terms of races, just to get by and do a strong race program, that's what matters. But we all have fun and we create the content that we need to create to give the value back to our partners that are going to be involved with the project. Because without that, we have to tell the story of how we came about and also how we're going to race and our journey through that.
But Harry, let me pause for a second. You just turned 30. As of a week and a half ago, you were a bike racer.
Yeah.
And now it sounds like you're taking on this role of a general manager. I mean, you're drinking through the fire hose, my friend. You're kind of like, head under the water, to say the least. So we may be having the worldwide exclusive interview with you, Harry, because maybe 10 years from now, you're going to have a team like Ineos, right? So what would you want that team to look like, assuming you get off the ground, assuming you get started, and assuming that this isn't just a one year thing? What is your vision or dream scenario of what this project, as meager as it looks right now, looks like even 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've not really thought past up until like a couple of, I've literally not had time for the last couple of days, but I have given it some thought in the last 2 or 3 days, because it kind of just morphed its way along from being, we need to try and like get a team together because there's no team in the UK, so let's try and do something. And then actually like speaking to sponsors and seeing their engagement, and then, looking and discussing our plans for the future. And actually for us to sit down, me and our close friends, to say like, we don't just want this to be a 1 year thing. Obviously we want sponsors to join us now and partners to come on board, but we want to keep this going, because if we stop next year, it's the same situation. So for us, just to keep growing, and I think it's better that we can start on a lower level and really hit it hard in the year after with a bit more investment from outside, because we need to prove that we are a brand new, it's always hard when you're a brand new project, you're a bit untested and untried, to get out there and to race. And I think that will do the talking, and hopefully will attract some further partners to come on board, to get a little bit bigger in the year after, where, maybe we can have a few more riders, and also maybe go to some races further afield. Love to do some racing in Canada and do some races in the US as well. But for us, like, that's the budget constraints really, for what it comes down to, for being able to provide a race calendar, which, maybe we try and focus on actually doing some U23 races as well, which in the future, that will be really important. But right now we can't have 2 race programs kind of running at the same time. The budget that we've got going, it's really just to run a single race program that everyone can kind of compete on. And but that's certainly a direction that I think we should head with it, because without that, like, that's our mission, is to obviously to try and get a place for U23 guys to progress and to move on, and they need to do those kind of races too. So for me, riding right now, obviously I can't, but going forward though, I think that it's there's a lot of fun to be had, but we just have to take it step by step, and hopefully we even attract the partners we've been speaking to. Hopefully, they're in this for the long run as well. But yeah, obviously we got to get off the ground first. So I don't want to run before I can walk. We've got this deadline on Friday, and right now we're a bit short, so we've been having a rake behind the sofa for some money.
And on the way to create that team, is there any chance you could then give your potential sponsors the promise of like certain media coverage? I mean, if for example, you would say, hey, I know a friend at BBC and they're gonna show whatever every week, like 10 minutes about our project, things like that. Is there a chance? Because I know TV attracts sponsors. TV time is super, super important, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's really important, like in the UK, that we have obviously we have the Tour of Britain, and that race is live from start to finish on TV. And for us to engage with the, with the fans around that, and to do interviews and things like that, and to be the front of that race, to really, we like all UK teams normally, we really race that race aggressively because we need to get on TV and get the names out there and stuff like that. But to actually, engage with the TV audience that way, it's a shame that in the UK the UK is losing its rights, I believe, to the Tour de France, I think from 2026.
The free TV, yes. ITV is losing it, yeah.
But yeah, going forward, they have Warner Brothers Discovery, obviously, is pretty big, and they're really growing a lot in the UK. So it'd be super interested if they were interested in joining on board with us. I don't know, but it is really important for the coverage, and we have budgeted already for a videographer, and we might only have one mechanic, but we need to try and have a content team, not a content team, but just one person who can do some interesting content and photos and videos, and to tell the story of the race, which is really important. So for us, that's what we can share with our partners, and we're kind of flexible, that we just want to be able to race in environments where it suits their needs as well. So we're kind of open to interpretation with that, but yeah, obviously racing in the UK and Europe is there's a lot of different options for us to go at.
Here's how you maybe could try to sell it. You go, if we get started to your potential main sponsor, we will be guaranteed invited to the Tour of Great Britain. And now you can get a smart person to count. They will count how many times our name will be mentioned, how many minutes of TV our logo will be live on national TV. And then you can ask them, can you imagine you have to buy that TV time? You would spend 10 million pounds buying an hour of TV time. We can guarantee you that basically for 350,000 pounds. That would be a selling point, maybe.
Yeah. No, definitely, Jens. In our little portfolio that we've got, we have gone over the whole general viewing of the UK National Series and the Tour of Britain, and the Tour of Britain is very impressive. Obviously, compared to the National Series is live streamed with YouTube and on a different channel. Sometimes it's on. It used to be on Discovery Channel as well. They used to have a bit on GCN, but then obviously now it's gone to Discovery. They still do some highlights, but it's huge. Like the numbers is really big. I think it's over 150 million impressions for the Tour of Britain in total across the whole race and across 7 days. It's very long. It's live for 4 hours every day, pretty much. It is absolutely huge. But yeah, I do have some of the numbers behind that, not to hand, but I do have a little document which has got some of that information, which is going to be really, really important going forward with, especially to UK companies, because they want to get their name out in the UK. So that's, for them, it's super important, which is great to drop in. So yeah, hopefully that can be our selling, not a selling point, but to get it over the line, I think it could be the deal breaker pretty much, that race.
Well, I had the word content because you've said the word content a few times. When I was growing up, you raced your bike and that's all that mattered. But we've learned through the gravel scene, through the criterium scene over here in the US, that riders don't only have to worry about their results, but they have to produce content on social media channels. I'm curious of, you as a 30-year-old rider and aspiring general manager, what is, other than what you just mentioned about the TV stuff, what other content outlets or content do young riders actually have to provide, or at least think about having to provide? Because for me, it's a stressor thinking about creating social media contact. So I'm curious what else besides getting on TV that you young kids have to think about.
Yeah, like it is something that's changed a lot, especially in recent years. And it shouldn't take away from performance, I don't believe. And I see it from both sides because I've also been in cycling before that kind of that time, and also now where it's super important. So I've seen both sides of it, and I think it's just super important that we make it easy for the riders. You know, we provide photos, videos, and things like that just to provide to the riders to create their own content with. They don't have to go looking elsewhere, or, you know, just, for example, just at the end of the race to always have a folder online, you know, within a couple of hours of the race with a lot of nice little pictures there with, but that then you obviously have to employ a photographer or a videographer to do that. And I think that you can create your own little small reels and little summaries of the race, of how it's gone, and you really capture the team in their moments, you know, during that day particularly. And it does take quite a bit of work. I really like seeing the drone shots like cut in there, and I don't know I want to put it in the budget for a drone, but I don't know if we're allowed to do it. But I've seen it in Europe, in Asia quite a lot, using drones. They don't use helicopters; they just use drones in races. I mean, it must save a lot of money to do that, but also it's got to be a really good drone to be able to handle it. But yeah, like to create content using that, a mixture of, you know, having that and also content by the roadside. I think the value is in the people, you know, that you have involved with the team, and when everyone's passionate about the project, and you work with great brands that really get the message of the project, like to help inspire the riders, and it really just keeps people engaged with it the whole time. And also, yeah, you provide that back to them, which then they can put out on their socials and create. You provide the base material for them to create content themselves around the event, so they could put a different perspective on it as well if they want to. It's just really important these days, obviously, with especially with ROI, and it means that a race that you did a week ago, you can still be talking about in the week afterwards, which is super important as well. It's not just, yeah, we did the race, it's now done, you know, it's everything that went into the race and also reviewing on it after. So I think it's a really important element that we focused budget a bit on that as well.
Harry, we want to thank you a million times for giving us your precious time, because your time literally is worth gold, right? You probably got another 20 phone calls to take once we get off the recording.
I got a few.
So thanks again for being our guest. Share this interesting and dramatic story with us, and we keep all fingers crossed for you.
Thanks.
That everything comes to a happy end on Friday.
Thanks, Jens.
Hey everyone, thanks again for listening to the podcast. As always, there's going to be a lot more content popping up here, including more great interviews with top guests like Harry. Please keep dropping your questions for us in the comments, and check our description below to find us on social media and Patreon to support this channel like these great people.